Hello and welcome to another episode. I am Brian, the Unskilled Commander, and this is a new episode of Possibilities, where I take three legendary creatures and try and think about how I would build them into a commander deck. Or would I even bother? Are the cards good enough? Are they not? Do I understand the mechanics properly? Probably not. But let's go ahead and dive in. We've got a multicolor extravaganza for you. First off, Astor, Bearer of Blades. He is a 4/4 that costs 2 generic and a red and a white. And he says, whenever Astor, Bearer of Blades, enters the battlefield, look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may reveal an equipment or vehicle card from among them and put them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Equipment you control, equip for 1 less, and vehicles you control have crew of 1. So this is pretty straightforward, I think, but cool. Basically, you want to make either an equipment deck or a vehicles deck. I suppose you could try and make both, but that would be a little... I'm not sure how that would work exactly. I mean, you could do it, of course, but I don't think the equipment would... Well, I know that you can equip artifacts, so I guess they would stay on when the vehicles stop being creatures. So that's not a concern, but basically you'd be wasting a lot of card slots to kind of dilute the deck as opposed to keeping it focused on what you want. But depends on what you want. If you want a double-sided kind of deck like that, then go for it. But the point is, either make him where Astor or some other big creature that you want, or specific creature in the deck, is going to just get dumped a ton of equipment on them. And now the equip costs... I'm sorry, I said that wrong. It doesn't equip for 1 less. The equipment cost is just 1, which is actually better than I realized. So yeah, so now all the equipments that, are really expensive to equip, 4, 5, 6 and up, unless you're equipping a legendary, but even so, now they all just equip for 1. So that means you can dump as many equipments as you can onto the field, and hopefully with even just 3 mana, you can equip a bunch of them immediately. So that's really cool. And then the vehicle side is also fun because there's a lot of really good vehicles, but they have crew costs of 4, 5, 6, where now all your vehicles just have a crew of 1. So pretty much any tiny little creature. So that would be, I think I would take it as more the vehicle side, because while I do have a vehicle deck that's a mono blue, it's okay, it's not the best, but I do have an equipment deck, my Kemba, that I'm really proud of, and I don't want to have a bunch of commanders that all do the exact same thing. So I would probably take this into a vehicles lane, basically, and put a bunch of little creatures in that had really good effects, that did stuff when they came in, or did stuff when someone attack, or when you attack rather, or when they tap, and then put like all the best, biggest vehicles in, because now even the vehicles that equip cost of 6 or 8 now equip for 1. So all your little 1/1 weenies that do cool effects, or 2/2s or whatever, they can all equip these things. So you get them out, you dump out the vehicles, you equip them. Now suddenly the vehicles are stomping through really fast for their cost. And because this commander has red, you can put haste in there, so all of your vehicles can have haste when they hit. So that's probably how I would do that. Moving on, we've got Animar, Soul of Elements. It's a blue, red, and green for a 1/1, but he has protection from white and from black, and whenever you cast a creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Animar, and creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each +1/+1 on him. So a 1/1 for 3 mana is kind of crappy, but he can get big really fast and make all your big creatures come out faster because they cost less, which I think is really fun. Honestly, I think all 3 of these commanders are ones that I would potentially build, because they all have fun abilities. Again, they're pretty straightforward, though. With Animar, it's pretty obvious. You're just going to have an incredibly creature-heavy deck, probably 2/3 big creatures, 1/3 little creatures, a lot of like Manador creatures and little guys that have good effects similar to Astor, and then a bunch of just really big creatures. Not necessarily Eldrazi, but I know a lot of people go for Eldrazi anytime green's involved and you're dealing with big creatures. I kind of stay away from them just because while Annihilator is a lot of fun, it's also kind of like not fun to be on the other side of, and it kind of just gets away too fast. But anyway, so you dump a bunch of little weenie creatures that have good effects, get 5, 6, 7 counters on Animar, and now all of your big creatures cost 5, 6, 7 mana less, so you can pull out 3 or 4 of them in one single turn with a limited amount of mana. And again, you've got red and green, so you've got access to trample and haste. So with the right kind of enchantments on the field, you can come swinging in on one turn really quick and just take out an entire player or do a lot of damage to all of the opponents. So Animar definitely has potential to probably be a new commander for me at some point soon. Maybe not soon, but sometime in the future, because it does just seem fun and easy to build. Like I said, I mean, there's not much to it. I'm sure there's ways, more obscure ways you could do it where you put a bunch of counters on him and then have things that remove counters to do cool effects and use him more as just a counter holder as opposed to accessing the lower cost spells for the creatures. That could be a way to take it as well. That's a bit, more complicated than my normal comfort level, but that's something I wouldn't mind looking into as well, that style. And finally, we've got Agatha of the Vile Cauldron. I really loved this card as soon as it got spoiled, and I definitely wanted it just because, Agatha looks cool because she looks like the MCU version of Agatha Harkness, who normally is portrayed in the comics as much, much older, with white hair and stuff like that, as the kind of granny character, whereas the MCU is more young and evil, and in the comics she's not normally evil. But regardless, that's the kind of vibe I get off of Agatha of the Vile Cauldron, so I want to build a deck around this one. I'm not sure how well I can do because it's got a cool thing. So she is a 1/1 for a green and a red. That's pretty okay, but for a commander, that's good because she only costs 2. We've got 2, 3, and 4 mana going up the chain here. A 2-mana commander is really, really good just because it gets out turn 2 at the earliest, or latest, really, depending on how good you can finagle your artifacts and whatever in your first turn. But most likely it's just going to be a turn 2. But that's way ahead of most other people's commanders. So now you've got that. And if she gets destroyed, it's only an extra 2 mana. So now in your second cast, she only costs 4. And now she's costing about the same as a normal commander. So you can let her get targeted 2-3 times before it really gets bad to recast her. Her ability, activated abilities of creatures you control cost X less to activate, where X is Agatha's power. This effect can't reduce the mana cost to less than 1 mana. And then she has pay 4 and a green and a red. Other creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample and haste till end of turn. That one kind of confuses me because that seems kind of crappy. Like, for 6 mana, you're dumping 6 mana into one ability, and it just gives trample, haste, and a 1/1, like +1/+1. Normally, when you see those kind of abilities, literally those 6 cost abilities, it's like +X, where X is like that creature's power and toughness, or XX is the number of creatures on the field. So it can be like, oh no, we're pumping these creatures up big in one move. And, okay, cool. If you had 12 men on the field, you could do it twice. And now they're, 20/20s with trample and or haste. And that's normally the kind of thing I see. Just trample and haste and a +1/+1. Don't get me wrong. Trample and haste are both really important, really powerful mechanics in Magic. And together, they're really good as well. Trample is only useful when something's big. A 2/2 with trample is really not going to do you any good, even if you're going up against a 1/1, because only 1 damage is getting through. Unless there's some other kind of weird shenanigans you're playing with that, it's not going to help you do much. You need something that's a 6/6 or a 5/5 or an 8/8 or something where the damage getting through is going to be more substantial. So I'm not really entirely sure. Well, I don't really like that ability. Now, I could be totally wrong. If I'm missing something in the utilization of it, please let me know in the comments. But the main ability, the activated abilities of creatures you control cost less where it's her power. To me, that's tricky to do, but that's also sounds fun. A normal, a non-unskilled commander player would probably be able to do that really effectually. But I feel that obviously you need something that's going to buff Agatha because you want her power and toughness to be higher. It doesn't have to be insanely big. I don't think, because there's not that many. I don't know off the top of my head by any means, but I don't think there's a lot of activated abilities that are like, pay 10 mana to activate this ability. Normally, activated abilities of creatures are like hers, 6 or less. So she doesn't have to be crazy big. I would maybe toss in a bunch of static buffs for the field, like Gaia's Anthem or something like that, just so that all creatures get plus whatever. And then, so, okay, now she's a 2/2, and now, activated abilities cost 2 less. And if you can get 1 or 2, I know there's 2 different green ones. One is all creatures you control, and then the one is all green creatures you control, which she would count as. So if you got both of those out, now she's a 3/3. Activated abilities cost 3 less. That's pretty solid. The question where I would have the problem is what creatures have activated abilities that are really cool that would make sense as a win con, or like how would you do that? Because I don't really know that many creatures that have them offhand. Like I'd have to go through all of my collection, and even then, it's like a tiny little 3-row box, so it's not that many. I'd have to do a lot of research and look up to see what kind of creatures really have fun abilities. But still, I do want to look into building her at some point in the future as well, to try and flex into something that's not my strong suit. Try and get better at those kind of things and utilizing activated abilities more. But there you have it. Those are 3 cool legendary creatures, all of which I think are worth building decks around. All 3 of which I might actually build decks around at some time in the coming years, rest of this year or next year, whatever. If nothing else, just to make more decks to have content for the channel, but also maybe to try and make a few that I could use against my friends. So what do you think? Do you have these decks already? Well, how do you build them? Do you think any of these decks would be fun to try and build if you haven't already? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you next time.